Grats and Gits, I have the greatest treat for everyone today. This is going to be a very different video than what you're used to. Today, I have Adam with me, and he is the founder of an organization called Imagination Veterans. Now, for those of you who don't know, I actually spent my previous life as what's called a chiropractic neurologist. So I specialize in treating traumatic brain injuries, migraines, pain syndromes, and I did it all over the world. And I certify people in postgraduate neurology all over the world. I still do it. Adam flagged me down at the World Championships of Warhammer. It was a super pleasure to get to meet him, and he told me about this amazing organization that he now runs. So Adam is a veteran, and he's going to share some of his experiences with you guys, and he's going to talk about how Warhammer 40,000 in particular and tabletop miniatures broadly have really changed his entire experience transitioning back to civilian life, and how he is using this awesome, amazing hobby that we're in to help other veterans transition back to civilian life and cope with some of the terrible things that they may have experienced. So yeah, Adam, do you want to just give us a brief introduction to yourself and maybe talk a little bit about your organization, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. Thank you for having me on. So I did 20 years in the Marine Corps, and over that 20 years, I suffered a few traumatic brain injuries, along with some other things due to typical military life. So as I started that transition outside of the military complex and coming into the civilian world, I found a lot of issues that I was dealing with uh, was not just a struggle for myself, but also a struggle for others, and how I was integrating these games into my daily life to help me cope with them. I found a way to start that into a nonprofit called Imagination Veterans, and that's what we do.
All right, that is freaking awesome. So what I want to do is real quick, just so everyone's caught up. I know a lot of people have heard the term PTSD, and they know what anxiety is kind of, and they know what depression is kind of. But I'm just going to give a kind of a brief description of what these things are, just so the audience knows exactly what we're talking about. And then we're going to hop right into your story. We're going to talk about some of the things that you've been through, and we're going to talk about how Imagination Veterans is really doing awesome things to help people just do freaking better. And they're using the amazing, incredible cool strategic game of Warhammer 40,000 to do it, which is so freaking exciting, and I love it. So, PTSD stands for post traumatic stress disorder. It is a condition that affects tons of veterans, but it's not only a veterans, actually. Most people don't understand is this going to occur in rape victims. It occurs in civilian casualties, not even casualties, but like car accidents. You'll have people who get into a horrible car accident, and they'll suffer a terrible session of PTSD where they can't ever drive again, or they'll be hit with crippling anxiety, crippling fears. So PTSD is a horrible condition that affects tons of people, and it's not a mental condition like many of you have been led to believe. What we know in most research right now is that PTSD is typically reflected from actual damage to the brain. And damage to the brain can come in a couple different forms. It can come in physical damage, so like your brain is actually bruised and there's bleeding and stuff like that. It can come in the form of chemical damage, whereas an area of your brain is no longer producing certain chemicals. I'm not going to get into the sciencey names of it. It's too much for this podcast. Actually, we might be doing another episode where I do get into that stuff if you guys are curious about it. And it can also come in the form of just emotional trauma. And interestingly enough, emotional trauma really is just actually physical trauma to the brain as well when we get even deeper into it. So PTSD, anxiety, depression, you've heard all of these terms. They're not exactly the same thing, but for the purposes of our conversation we're going to go through today, you can kind of think of as PTSD as a catch-all phrase for anxieties, depressions, all sorts of just horrible stresses that people go through after a traumatic event, whether that's physical, mental, or chemical, right? So that's just a little brief overview, everyone. I can do a much deeper dive. As a matter of fact, I've got another channel that I'll link down below where I've done a deeper dive on this. And heck, I actually might post this there as well. So Adam, why don't you just kind of tell us about, you don't need to tell us like what you actually went through, but the transition back to civilian life, the struggles, the things that all of you and your brothers in the Corps, and people from the Army. By the way, I was in the Army, so you're okay because you're a Marine, but it's whatever. What other people are going through, because a lot of people just they go through such horrible trials that they don't understand that there is something else that they could do. And you found a really unique avenue to get yourself back to living a what most people would consider normal life, not 100% normal, but this is going to be helpful for a lot of people. So just share your story. Go for it.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the great things about our community here in Warhammer is that we do have quite a large martial culture. those veterans, I mean, Watt Actus is another veteran of ours. There's a lot
Oh,
of
is
the
he?
people that we have out there. Oh yeah,
Oh,
a
cool.
lot of veterans. He was in the Army. Great guy. We stick together in a way in which where you don't always understand why that person next to you, the person you're playing with, the person that you're talking with, they have that same embodiment of those values that you get from being within a martial culture. And as you start to develop that, when you're playing with somebody, you start to ask those same questions. And we get together like this. And I mean, obviously, you care a lot, and I care a lot. That's awesome that you have another channel just for this. I'm gonna actually have to check that out. But as far as my experience, uh, my real experience with the PTSD, with the brain injury, with the other neurological conditions, it started around 10, 15 years ago when I had one of the bigger hits to my head, and other events that happened in between all those that just wasn't properly diagnosed, not because of a lack of try by the healthcare system, but just because of the complexity of what was going on at the time and how, deployment tempo and so on and so forth were happening. It just wasn't, the medical was not there to
Yeah.
be expressed right.
Yeah.
And it actually took 7 years for me to get to some place where I was getting headaches. These headaches turned into week headaches, these turned into month headaches, until it finally happened where I just never stopped having a headache. It just went from headache to migraine, headache to migraine, headache to migraine, never went away. And then it started really messing with my sleep. And then I started having issues speaking. I had issues counting. My emotional control was very erratic, and I couldn't connect those dots. Sometimes it seems hard, especially as somebody in the military where your job is about precision. It's about making decisions as expediently but as calculated as possible, and understanding the emotional equivalency to that, and then not being able to express those things. It causes a lot of consternation. It causes a lot of self-doubt, and that never feels good. But I was very lucky that I happened to be in a good place at the time where I had an amazing set of medical practitioners and also just amazing leaders who understood what had happened, understood enough to say, you know what, we need to take care of this person, we need to take care of the family, we need to take care of everything that's going wrong. So I got speech pathologists, I saw, special types of neurologists, I had recreational therapists, occupational therapists. And as I started to transition and I left my last duty station and I came down here to New Orleans, I actually got connected with a organization that dealt specifically with brain injury and neurological conditions. And because I was dealing with both, they really helped me map out what was happening in between all of those blocks as those blocks started to come through. And I started to be able to actually self identify them. That's also another big part of things like this is, I mean, as you know, PTSD and just brain injuries in general, it's not easy to self identify all the time when one of these things are going to trigger a reaction, and whatever type of reaction that is. One of my largest reactions I have is I start to lose time. When I cognitively overload myself and I'm no longer able to connect dots that are as simple as counting to five, I will start to lose the ability to remember that this is happening. My emotions will come out a lot heavier. I will have a hard time counting, talking. Nothing will make sense. And with those types of things, I have been able to work on with all of my therapists, with actually a bunch of the people within our community, where I can just say, "Hey, bud, I just want you to know that I have these issues. Towards the end of the game, I might start having issues with counting, and if I look a little bit confused, by all means, come help me out. Tell me, anything you can do to help is just going to make this game that much better for us."
If I may just hop in here,
Yeah.
for some of you guys, this could manifest pretty easily while you're playing a game of Warhammer. I'll just give you a good example for it. So, all right, man, you've got 5 saves at AP2, followed by 3 saves at AP1, and you get feel no pains against the devastating wounds. Well, for someone who's suffering like Adam is suffering, and you've actually probably played people who have done this, they might just go, um, how many? Okay, so I'll roll 2 dice. No, man, it's 5 saves at AP2. It's 3 saves at. Okay, so I'm gonna roll 5 dice. So, and that doesn't mean that like people aren't cognitively aware, don't have the ability to do math. That doesn't mean people are dumb, anything like that. It's just it's an overload of information, and it really causes a lot of struggle with people when they're transitioning to work life, relationships, all freaking sorts of stuff. Okay, so that's good. That's a great foundation for it. When you started playing wargaming, let's just transition into that a little bit. Talk to me about 40k tabletop gaming. What initially drew you to it?
So I was looking at avenues for the group of individuals I was with, and also being able to transition with these items to send them out to different places through the nonprofit. I had actually read Warhammer books for years. I mean, probably 8, 10 years since then. I had a corporal who introduced me to the Warhammer books and handed me what's it, the Wolves of Russ series, basically. And there I am at night, when I cannot sleep and I'm not on duty. I'm just stuck there. I'm reading these books, and I decided, you know what? Let's actually look at getting these games.
Nice.
And I had made a decision that because of how calculating everything was, that I wanted to choose an army that you couldn't always get that outcome. So I chose orcs. Orcs are just hilariously fun. Uh, as much as you want to have them do what you want them to do, that doesn't mean that's what they're going to do. I started more towards the tail end of ninth edition, but I just remember using my SAG and getting strength 5 instead of strength 12 or whatever it was, and then never hitting anything or never wounding anything. But just having it was awesome. And when I started playing the game, or the one thing I really started to notice automatically was how painting the figures was helping my fine motor skills. One of those things that I still struggle with today, and it's something that I'm going to deal with for the rest of my life, and I'm happy to do it because now I get to paint more. Is that while I was using fine detail on my orcs and trying to learn how to paint teeth right or make this aura around a ball or something like that, or even better, the squig going or the grot going into the sag. Um, I had to learn how to paint and how to do that very fine motor skill, and that started helping me write better, and it kept my writing better throughout the day. And then also when I started playing games, I started to adapt my new learning skills because I was having so much trouble counting or making things add up. I was able to utilize the figurines and I would take away them one by one to
Mm.
remember that I didn't have 10 more boys there anymore. I had 6 more boys. And because I had 6, I didn't have to take a battle shock test or so on like this. It was the utilization of multiple factors and facets within the game that helped me overcome and create new neurological pathways to be continue to get better along my path.
And that's freaking awesome, and I love hearing that. And actually, this is something that we do in therapy when we're helping people with mild traumatic brain injuries all the time. We'll give them progressively more complex tasks to help them regrow parts of their brain. And guys, there's a lot of neuroscience behind that. And Adam and I are actually going to come back for another session where I'm going to break all of that neuroscience down. So if you're a nerd like me and you care about it, I'm actually going to explain how it works. I might even get all the whiteboard and draw some things for you guys. It's going to be horrible drawing because I am not an artist, but I play competitively. Don't ever look at my paint jobs. Adam's guaranteed way better than I am. But yeah, so that's a huge part of it. So could you go ahead and maybe talk to us a little bit about like what when you started the tabletop gaming, what really made it stand out as like a healthy and constructive outlet compared to say some of the other hobbies that some of your battle brothers were maybe coping with, whether it was video games or, well, honestly, a lot of them get into like steroid-induced bodybuilding, which, by the way, I'm a huge bodybuilding fan, but there's issues in that world as well. Why do you think you found a healthier and better alternative in tabletop gaming than some of your battle brothers did in other areas? I suppose.
So I'm a firm believer in being able to be present with somebody else when you play games. It's not that I don't like video games. In fact, I really enjoy them. I don't get to play them as much anymore due to my issues with my eyes and also just time. Being an adult is time consuming. But what I've noticed is that the avatars of oneself in which where we can enact certain actions that would not be acceptable in a society where you are actually face to face with somebody else is starting to become a lot more prevalent in the video game settings.
Yeah.
People doing a lot of things that I find that you wouldn't accept that if you were in front of someone. They're more than willing to say and do these things.
Yeah.
And I believe that having that interaction with another person in front of you can help you adjust these different emotional outbursts or different opinions or different ways of doing things to notice how their body reaction, their tone of voice, the way that they're speaking to you now in front of you is better and a much better cue for the interaction you should have as you start to transition away from such a martial culture. Because I don't know how many times I've been told, I'm not your soldier, I'm not your Marine, I'm not your sailor, I'm not your this or this. Because just in the military, we have a different way of speaking to each other. And not to say it's wrong or right, it's just it is a way in which we speak to each other to relay information, and how we do it is also a way that we develop coping mechanisms
Yeah.
to deal with these things that are typically PTSD inducing. We say and act things out that are not typically okay to speak about.
Mhm.
But if you're sitting there at a game table with somebody, or standing there and you're rolling dice with somebody, and you have an outburst, and it's one that would typically would just be okay to do at in a formation after you just got done doing a 20-mile rucksack uh, hump, but nobody would care then. But that person looks at you from across the table and they go, that's not okay.
Right.
Things like that will help that transition towards the civilian life, because you will notice that broad speaking between two people. And the fact that you're playing a fantasy game allows you to be more vulnerable and more accepting of these things, and hopefully start to change your interactions. I know that that's one of the biggest things that the game did for
Yeah.
me, was that I was able to reflect upon the way that I acted with other people when I wasn't able to control my emotions, control my cognitive uh, ability to not say things in a way that could be misconstrued incorrectly. The time that I've spent on the table and being able to play with other people and see their reactions and have them help me, even after I have these outbursts, it's made me reflect in a much better man, let alone a better family man, just all around better games sportsman.
Yeah, if I may, I'm going to kind of summarize here just a little bit, and definitely stop me if I'm a little off base here. So one of the things that happens to a lot of people once they're transitioning out of service, so something that most people don't understand is these people have been through fairly unimaginable things. And I'm not going to get too graphic here, but just stuff that you couldn't imagine, that you just can't imagine. Um, and in order to cope with going through such horrible trials, in the military especially, and this happens in other areas as well, people will develop darker senses of humor, for example. People will develop different ways of speaking that is honestly just very inappropriate, but because of what they go through, it's their coping mechanism. And when people are transitioning back to civilian life, then they'll struggle learning what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And it's not necessarily that they're not smart enough to know what's appropriate. People are smart, but you have to understand is that there is a neurological issue in people who are suffering with depressions, anxieties, PTSDs that stop them from being able to self monitor themselves. So, one of the really cool things about tabletop gaming is it is a calm environment where things are relatively slow moving versus, say, like a violent, high paced first person shooter where you are getting immediate feedback from other people right in front of you, letting you know what is and isn't appropriate. And it's not like it's their job to coach you on becoming a normal human in quotation marks. I should use a different phrase, but being able to integrate with people who haven't been what you've been through is critical. And that's one of the really cool things that social interaction causes. So a lot of people will go and they'll dive really into these first person shooters, or honestly even these RPGs where they're playing alone, and they'll actually act out in the game terrible things that their coping mechanisms have taught them is okay, because of the traumas that they've been through. I can see from my personal experience. So I worked at a neurology clinic where we treated people who were going to die every single day. We treated people who at progressive supranuclear palsy, for example, which is basically your brain is just melting into mush. And it's like what we're seeing in the clinic every single day is depressing. I look at my patient, I say, hey, listen, I'm going to do everything I can to make it so that you're able to pee on your own, but you're still going to go home and die in 3 months. So what we did is we started making jokes amongst ourselves, amongst clinicians. And if you were to walk in and hear the jokes we were making, you'd be like, these are awful people. Oh my gosh, cancel them. But the reality is it's a defense mechanism. So when veterans are doing jokes like this, it's not that they're being bad people or anything. It's just what happens. Like it's a defense mechanism. So transitioning to a civilian life, playing in a tabletop game, giving this social interaction, it's pretty awesome that you can get immediate feedback that helps you self-censor and reintegrate into society. So hopefully that helps kind of clarify for people a little bit. Adam, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
How'd you like once you discovered that you've been painting and you've been playing games and it's making life easier for you and more enjoyable for you, and suddenly you're not getting as frazzled, and you notice that when you're at work and you're typing, you don't like get lost in trails as much. What made you think that, hey, I've got battle brothers, I've got guys I need to share this with? Like, what made you think about starting Imagination Veterans and sharing with people and helping them do the same?
Well, what really got me is just kind of that continuous feel, the need to give back.
Okay.
I was very fortunate that I had an amazing team around me, and so many times where I know that a lot of our sisters did not get the same treatment, the same understanding, the same life experience that I was able to go through. And I knew that it was at that point that if anything that I have experienced over the 5 years of around transitioning and starting this new life, knowing what I am dealing with now, understanding it more, and now being able to be around others that are having very similar circumstances as to me, the best way I could do is to help them through what's helped me. So that's why I started Imagination Veterans, is because throughout this journey that I went on with my family, my friends, my brothers and sisters, I was finding techniques that were helping me just as much for my own self than just going to the doctors and the therapists and stuff like that,
If not
because I
more
was able
help
to
at a certain
practice
point,
these
right?
in a certain
Yeah.
way. It was because I didn't feel like I was being looked down upon, or that I wasn't capable, or that I was broken, because I can, in a game, I can act out in a fantasy the things that, while I'm in front of somebody else, allows me also to self-identify
Mm-hmm.
those actions that I can and cannot do, and then they're willing to help me through it.
Yeah.
And that is where the nonprofit came from. It came from just being able to help others in the same process with their own way, finding their own journey home.
So is it safe to say that now that you've started Imagination Veterans, you've created a tabletop gaming community that is veterans, civilians? Is it only veterans? Do you have other people involved who are going through civilian traumas? Like,
So this nonprofit is for service members, veterans, their families, and the community.
okay,
We try to connect them cognitively, emotionally through board art and card and art therapy games. It is integrated through all parts of our society, because the way that this works is we cannot rehabilitate, we cannot help each other if we cannot accept the fact that we need to transition.
yep.
Our transition to the civilian world is one of the largest factors that you will ever do as a military person. And I can say from personal experience, the loss of identity that you get when you take off the uniform is quite profound.
Yeah.
It's quite profound, and sometimes very difficult to realize you're dealing with. So we need to have civilians. We need to have other battle brothers. We need to have our family. We need to have the community connecting this way. So we invite all parts and all people to play the games with us in any way, shape, or form, whether it's board, whether it's card games, whether it's painting. It doesn't matter to us. We just want to integrate and help everyone we can.
So people who suffer from traumatic brain injuries, they often go through a really bad transition. I'm not going to get too sciencey here, But what'll happen is you'll suffer damage to a part of your brain called the frontal lobe. There's other areas that'll get damaged as well. But when the frontal lobe in your brain gets damaged, the things that happen to you are primarily what's called executive function deficits. And what that means is making good decisions just suddenly becomes harder. Remembering to bathe becomes harder. Remembering to brush your teeth becomes more challenging. There's a reason we have an epidemic of homeless vets on the streets. There's a reason when people get into drugs, they become homeless because suddenly that area of your brain called your frontal lobe, which is responsible for executive function, stops working nearly as well. One of the amazing things about tabletop games like 40k is it is a complex decisions, but it's not all at once. It's not rapid fire. You get a moment to breathe and think in between. It's not like a video game where things are flying at you and you have to hit X and roll and dodge and dip and duck, you know? So you have breathing moments in between to actually make your plan. Doing this actually creates new neurons in your brain that grows your brain. And once again, I'm going to get much deeper into that stuff in maybe a future episode. But Adam, do you have any success stories with Imagination Veterans where you've taken someone who's been in the deep dark and then suddenly they've come out of it. Now that they've got a job, now they're enjoying new friendships. Like, could you elaborate on? You don't have to say a name, of course, but
Yeah. Yeah, actually, we have quite a few of those
yeah,
in which where you help them with something small as far as a game, or if they want to paint, or if they just want to mess around with something, if they want to be around other brothers and sisters and utilize this type of companionship. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what it becomes. When you start playing with others and
yeah,
they start helping you and you start helping them, and then somebody else comes in and they start helping them, and you see this large conglomeration of people helping people
mm,
in the smallest senses, but it also making it the largest impacts because every brick was made and then put and made a pyramid at some point. And we do have those kinds of success stories. I have one in particular that I am extremely proud of. He is an elder gentleman that's he suffered pretty bad to the point where it was almost full on paralysis of the spine and
mm,
needed to get a rod basically put from the top of his skull all the way down. He had a lot of issues with drugs. He had some issues with just the physical ailments that drugs entail, and then what happened from those, and then just the neurological conditions that started to pile on because of his brain injury, because of his neurological conditions, because of the era that he came from. It was looked at as in what you just broke up. Oh, he was a druggie. No, no, he got addicted to morphine
yep,
because it was the only thing that helped him at the time. And then when they took him off of it, it made that dependency so much harder. But he truly tried and wanted to get better. And I remember him just always being an amazing artist. He when we got to do art therapy, part of the group that I am in, um, we started to use these different art figures and allowing them to paint them to come up with different concepts for however or whatever they wanted to do. And I had a local game store who gave a bunch of miniatures to us so we can do this with them. And what he painted this right here.
nice. Look at that beholder. That's
Yeah,
sick.
yeah. Well, that individual ended up getting first place at the VA's art festival for creative figure painting one year. And just watching him take that in and seeing that defining moment of he accomplished something, and not only did he accomplish it for himself, he accomplished it for all those who were around him. Because guess what? When he was painting this, and after that, he started helping other people, saying,
Yeah,
"Hey, have you tried this? Hey, have you done that? Oh, maybe you should try this." And I found that this is a really good technique. And it just flourished. It turned into one person's success story just because we got to sit down and paint and have a good time one day. It turned into him helping a bunch of other people doing the exact same thing. So now when we go to the VA and we have art therapy days and stuff like that, he'll come over and be like, "Hey, while I was at home, I did this, and this helped me," because he has only one good working arm. He taught me one of the coolest things I'd never thought about doing. He took a small plastic bowl, took double-sided tape, put the tape on the bottom of the bowl, and then stuck the figurine upside down so he could paint under it because he only had one arm.
That's awesome.
I would never have thought of that, but it's just those types of adaptations that people can do that then that influenced me to understand that and start offering those exact same things to everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's just one of many stories of just a great outcome that I mean, it just sits on my desk and I look at it every single day, and it gives me hope, it gives me joy, it keeps me going.
And I love hearing that. And so people hearing this, just so I can maybe direct you a little bit, this might sound like someone, oh, he just got interested, he got motivated for life. It's so much deeper than that, because when this gentleman actually learns the motor skills of painting, what that does is it literally creates new cells in the brain, and these new cells in the brain will repair and actually increase the performance of that frontal lobe thing that I was talking about earlier. And there's a lot behind that, which once again it'll be a future video where I break that nonsense down. But he's actually literally growing new brain when they're doing this, and that's why this type of therapy works so freaking well for people who are suffering from neurologic trauma. So Adam, I don't want to keep you too long. So do me a favor. Let Talk to me about Imagination Veterans. If people want to help, how can they help? I'm going to put your links down below. I'm going to be doing my part. I'll be breaking down the neurology. I'll try to be helping you like deliver the message as much as I can. But other people are watching us. They care. They want to get involved. Do you have a link for people to donate that I could put down? Like what can people do? Can they send you miniatures?
Absolutely. You can send anything you want to send. So this nonprofit's 100% in, 100% out. Anything that comes into us, we make sure that it goes to a great place, whether it's cash to buy more miniatures, paint, primer, or utilities, or it's to utilize them to buy games and hand them out at Christmas functions
Mm,
or through Mardi Gras or other VA events. Uh, what we try to do is we try to help the family first. And because I'm a firm believer, and we're a firm believer in family, and that close knit tie can help a
yeah.
lot, especially through the gaming community, because those are the first people they're going to realize that the veteran, the service member, or just somebody in the family or somebody in your community is having a hard time dealing with something.
Yeah.
They'll be able to catch, well, you counted to four, but you're actually at 6 or 7 right now. They're the ones that are going to see it, and those helped a lot. So what we do is we take those, we bring them to the VA, we bring them to other veteran services, or we mail them out. Through our website, we have a Facebook group as well, and on our website there's ways to open up something on your own set. If you would like to open up an Imagination Veterans in your area, by all means, contact me, and we will do what we can to try and add that avenue for you to help your veterans and your service members in your community. Um, we do have ways through my pay to donate money. Anything is always welcome. So our website is www.imagination.com. My email is adam.vanhoozer at imaginationveterans.com. You'll find that on the website. Last name's a bit much, I know. But reach out. All we want to do is continue to help. And if you have any ideas, please send them my way. Big things that we like to do is have art therapy at veterans halls, or we like to do game days with the veterans. We like to go out to different places and donate our time and donate our resources to those veterans, those service members in the family.
That is absolutely awesome. I love it. And if you guys have like a local gaming club, guess what? You've got 1,000 veterans who live like within 5 minutes of you, who want help, and not all of them need
Yeah,
help. Like, and when we say need, like people could figure it out. These are big boys and girls. they're strong people, right? But that doesn't mean that it would hurt to just reach out. I love the concept. I love just the idea of having Imagination Veterans, just like maybe even a little 1 month, 1 month, 1 week meeting. Excuse me, one meeting a month at a local gaming club. Hey, this is Imagination Veterans Day, where we've maybe got some experienced 40k players or AOS players or whatever players, and if you want to come, we're here to help you walk through the game. Right,
that
something
that
like
reminds
that.
me. That reminds me. I forgot to bring that up.
Mm,
So we took a thing away from the pile of shame that we all have backlog of. And we started what's called the Pile of Plastic Initiative.
Ooh,
We take all the used bits that you have, any sprues, any miniatures, utilities, and that is what we use to do those art and game days. We bring professional painters, we bring in art therapists, we bring in recreational therapists and occupational therapists for when we have these art days and we have these painting days, so they can help build and structure a proper way around helping these veterans and these service
love
members
it.
adapt to that new way. So our Pile of Plastic initiative is all based off of that. So I still have about 100 miniatures that I'm priming and I'm giving away. I mean, we gave out over 47 individual miniatures this last Christmas time, just so people could help maneuver their kill teams and their 40,000 armies, trying to start a new crusade list. Sometimes that's all they need is something small and some help on our end. And those things always make a big difference.
Dude, I freaking love it. That's awesome. Adam, do you have anything else that you want to say on this session? And like I said, we're going to come back to later, and we're going to do more where maybe we flesh out exactly like the neuroscience behind how this works. So if you are a veteran and you're looking for help and you're looking for something to get included in, I'm going to kind of explain why it works, because it's there's a lot more than just, oh, suddenly I'm feeling better that gets behind it, and it can be very helpful to hear that. But what everyone needs to know is that being involved in tabletop gaming, being involved in a social group that is interested in a what we call a lower dopamine environment, and once again, I'll get more into that later on, is extremely critical. So any last things that you want to throw out there, and once again, we're going to put all of your links in the description down below. So if you guys want to get in contact with Adam, we'll have it all there for you. If you want to get in contact with me to let me know something that I can do better, then let me know, and we'll get this going. So last words.
Well, I want to thank you first and foremost. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on here and try and open up that aperture for other people and explain just a little bit of how our lives change, not just through the transition, but when you do have these types of physical ailments that become an everyday, every moment thing. And what I would like to say about that is that thank you. Thank every single one of you that sits across the table from one of us and takes the time to look into our eyes and make sure that we're okay, make sure that things that we are doing the right things, we are working through our problems, and we're having a hell of when you reach out to a veteran, when you reach out to play with somebody, you don't know the effect you're having on their lives, especially when you sit across from somebody who has had to defend their nation against enemies that you can't expect the same opportunity to sit down next to somebody that next day. So I want to thank just the gaming community in general for helping us. You help us every single day, and we try to continue to be better every single day because.
That's beautiful. That was awesome. Guys, normally this is where I would tell you to like, share, and subscribe, which I'm telling you anyway. But where right now I'm telling you, click the links down below, see what Imagination Veterans is up to, see if there's any representatives in your area, reach out to them, help. Just get into it, man. It's freaking fun. You're playing Warhammer. Just play it with with other people. So with that, I think we're gonna end it. Adam, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate you, bud. And
Thank you.
we'll log off. Crump on, everybody. Bye bye.
Wow.